On the shores of Seneca Lake, a retired power plant has reawakened, now pumping out 500 million pounds of CO2 a year. Not because this community needs electricity. Its main purpose? Powering thousands of computers 24/7, mining Bitcoin.
The Seneca Lake community in upstate New York is suffering the consequences of a private equity firm buying up a decommissioned power plant, converting it to using natural gas solely. Almost solely, actually, for the purpose of mining Bitcoin. And when I say they're suffering the consequences, what I'm specifically referring to is how this Bitcoin mining is impacting the local environment, particularly Seneca Lake, which is a lake that the community enjoys, usually during hot seasons like summertime. People in the community go there, they enjoy themselves. But the situation has gotten so bad that the water in the lake, as is described by some of the community members, is as hot as entering a jacuzzi. Now, some of you might be wondering, how does that work? How does mining for Bitcoin destroy the environment? Well, it certainly does emit CO2, and also the lake itself is being utilized for Bitcoin mining. And this next video gives you a good explanation of how that all works.
A private equity firm bought the dormant coal plant in 2014, converting it to natural gas, installing nearly 10,000 computers, and growing. Bitcoin is all digital. There's no bank, no government printing money. Instead, high-powered computers solve complex puzzles to verify Bitcoin transactions. When they do, they also earn Bitcoins. That's called Bitcoin mining. And it devours huge amounts of electricity, more than entire countries like Argentina and Sweden.
We do not need to pollute this lake for Bitcoins. We don't all need Bitcoin.
An intake pipe 2 football fields long cools the 70-year-old turbines with about 100 million gallons of water a day drawn from the lake. The superheated water is discharged into a river, raising fears about the fragile trout and harmful algae blooms.
I mean, who cares about the ecosystem? Who cares about the trout and the algae blooms? Algae blooms, that sounds like something that the community can pay for later on if it causes any problems. We got to privatize gains, socialize losses, and this whole Bitcoin mining operation in upstate New York has led to protests in the community, understandably so. Because again, this power plant that was previously decommissioned wasn't bought by the private equity firm in order to provide electricity or power to the community or to do anything wonderful for the community. It's all about helping to invest, or it's all about investing in this decommissioned power plant in order to mine Bitcoin, which doesn't help the community, it helps the private investors in Bitcoin, right? So this is an ongoing problem, to be quite honest with you, not just in New York, but we're seeing this type of behavior across the country, specifically with private equity firms relying on fossil fuels in order to do this mining. So I want to give you some more details about the private equity firm and also give you other examples of how this is impacting communities across the country. So the facility on the shores of Seneca Lake is owned by the private equity firm Atlas Holdings and operated by Greenwich Generation LLC. They have increased the electrical power output at the gas-fired plant in the past year. Last week, Greenwich announced a new Bitcoin mining operation at a retired printing plant Atlas owns in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And they've got their eyes open. They're like, okay, great, where else can we do this? Because it's obviously highly profitable for them. They don't care about the impact on the local communities, whether it's environmental or otherwise. But residents, of course, aren't happy about this. Going back to the Seneca Lake community that we're talking about here, one resident by the name of Abi told CNBC that the lake is so warm, you feel like you're in a hot tub. And on June 5th, the residents staged a protest as a result of this power plant at a nearby Department of Environmental Conservation office in Avon. The regulators don't rein in the Greenwich plant. They say 30 other power plants in New York could be converted to Bitcoin mining, imperiling the state's emission reduction goals. And it seems like there's very little regulation around this. I mean, wow, what a shocker. It's what you can expect. But like other corporations, this private equity firm is using donations, giving out donations in order to garner some support in the community. For instance, not everyone wants this operation gone. The Dresden Fire Department welcomed the company's $25,000 donation for a Jaws of Life machine, and the school district was grateful for a $20,000 gift to develop education and enrichment programs. So I mean, that strategy is actually incredibly smart. I mean, when you really think about it, you have local communities that are defunding certain things that are incredibly necessary, whether it be funding for the fire department, funding for the public schools in the area. You have a private equity firm come in, they're like, we don't want a lot of backlash over what we're doing and destroying this community and destroying the local environment and the environment generally speaking, right? They're contributing to climate change through this Bitcoin mining. So instead of maybe reconsidering what they're investing in, private equity firms are like, I don't know, we'll just buy these people off. I mean, they're desperate for money. Their local politicians don't do right by them. So $25,000 here, $20,000 there. We'll garner some support and keep doing what we're doing. Who cares? Jacuzzi lakes, let's destroy the local trout, algae blooms, who cares? Bitcoin mining is where it's at. We gotta make money. Private investors, they love Bitcoin, it's the future. Let's give you more. The environmental consequences are horrific. So an estimate from the University of Cambridge says global Bitcoin miners use more energy in a year than Chile. That's a country. When the energy comes from fossil fuels, the process can add significantly to carbon emissions. The Greenwich plant houses at least 8,000 computers and is looking to install more, meaning it will have to burn even more natural gas to produce more energy. So this is, I mean, it keeps getting worse. And by the way, this particular power plant, they want it to produce 26 times as many Bitcoin, or mine 26 times as many Bitcoin compared to what other power plants are currently generating right now or mining right now. And here are some other examples of what we're seeing across the country. As CNBC reports, in 2016, the private equity firm ArcLight Capital Partners of Boston bought into Limetree Bay, an oil refinery and storage facility in, I want to say, St. Croix in the US Virgin Islands. The operation had gone bankrupt after a series of toxic spills, but it reopened in February. Just 3 months later, it was shuttered after it unleashed petroleum rain on nearby neighborhoods. Oopsie doopsie. We got a mine for Bitcoin though. I mean, I wonder who paid for that, by the way. Did they pay for that, or did the community pay the consequences of that? These private equity firms also invest a large amount of money into fossil fuel companies rather than renewable energy, right? And the numbers bear that out. For instance, in the past 10 years, private equity firms have poured almost $2 trillion into energy investments, according to Preqin, a private equity database. About $1.2 trillion has gone into conventional energy investments, such as refineries, pipelines, and fossil fuel plants, compared to just $732 billion in renewables like solar and wind power. And investor criticism prompts some public companies to dump fossil fuel assets, but then private equity firms are ready buyers. So while we see the gains made by on-the-ground activism and organizing regarding banks pulling their investments out of fossil fuel companies, private equity firms are like, yo, we're looking for some short-term investments. We're looking for an opportunity to make money. We don't care about morals, we don't care about ethics, please, we don't care. This is an easy way to make money. We don't care about the environment. We're gonna privatize the gains, socialize the losses. The community's sick of it, they're protesting it, but this story doesn't get much attention. We've heard a little bit here and there about Bitcoin mining and how damaging it is to the environment, but you don't hear these personal stories. You don't hear these local stories. You don't hear about what local communities are going through in regard to a change in their environment, a change in even the temperature of the lakes that they enjoy. It's just pathetic. And the worst part about all of this, other than of course the contribution to climate change and making this planet impossible to live on eventually, is the fact that these private equity firms take out debt to do these investments. And a lot of these private equity firms are tied to pensions. So if one of these investments goes south, who cares about the pensions? I mean, they're certainly gonna suffer the consequences of that as well. That's a whole different angle that I do wanna cover on this story in more detail at a later date. But we need to have a real discussion about what's happening with Bitcoin mining, because it is contributing to climate change. It seems to be completely unchecked. Private equity firms are doing more than just buying up single family homes and pricing Americans out of the market. I mean, they're also destroying local communities and their environment through the behavior that they're engaging in. But they don't care. There's very little regulation around this, and it's gonna continue happening unless we have progressive politicians paying close attention, because we already know that corporate politicians, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, just kind of look the other way as this stuff happens. So solidarity with the community of the Seneca Lake community in upstate New York. They're going through this, but they're not the only ones. This is a very real issue that does need to be addressed, and unfortunately it's just not getting a lot of attention. Ridiculous YouTube beefs apparently drive up the views, but share this video. Show that you care about what's happening with American corporations, their greed, their unwillingness to police themselves. They'll never police themselves. You need politicians to regulate, and you need real investments in renewable energy. Otherwise, they're just gonna run rampant and do whatever they want. That's what we're seeing right now, and it's just absolutely sad and pathetic.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.